I'm going to assume that YouTube is just live streaming this now. Um,
Um, I'm not sure how long it takes to want. I mean, under your live in your channel, you've only got one stream from a couple of hours ago,
yep, that
which
was
I
my
guess
test.
was a test stream or something. Yep. And right now, it is actually. It says, I see something next to your. There we go. Okay, yeah, well, you're good, mate. Carry on.
All right. Hopefully, this is able to reach more people, and I probably at some point will need to put a bunch of legal jargon on there. But for anyone watching, like I said, this is just for educational purposes. We're just reviewing. A lot of teachers. This is just a group study for paths. So I'm going to close that and just assume it's all recording. Um,
Yeah, it looks like it is. I can't actually see your screen on Discord though.
oh, okay. See, I got too much tech stuff going on. This is not my wheelhouse here.
And just a thought, maybe it might be an idea to hide your account info in the live stream.
Is there my account info in there?
Well, it's not showing up completely, but it could
Is
do
it
if
just
you
this?
want.
Like, is it just like the PA?
Exactly, exactly.
Nah, I'll be fine. I'll just make it small.
Cool.
So I think okay. Making my computer move super slow. So regarding today, did you guys take anything today?
I did. Um, I took a second entry short about an hour after the open. I'm going to struggle to see it on your chart.
Good.
Uh,
Was it the same one I took coming back towards the EMA, or was it
yeah,
something
it
else?
was. It
This
was
one?
quite a big bar actually.
It
I
That's the
can't.
looks
one I
like
I
took.
can't.
this
Ah, yeah,
one.
that's the one. Yep.
Okay, let me get rid of some of this then, just from perspective of what we can see at that time of the day, right? Okay. So yeah, this one is really just dependent on how much of an overshoot you think kind of happened, right? Where if it was like this, or if there's an overshoot like this, and you took it as a second entry short back to the EMA, right? This one, well, I guess before we go into it, do you have any comments on what you saw here?
I had my downtrend pretty much the same way. I was playing with extending it with no overshoot, but it definitely fit better with the
Mm-hmm.
overshoot. But once we got those two clear legs, and a decent signal bar, I was kind of in on that, and we did have enough room to the EMA.
Yeah, and did it? I assume both of you guys were able to scalp out on that one.
Yes, correct. I think it went for. I think it went for just. Let's have a look.
I went for about 8.
Yeah, so we got the full scalp out of that. Yeah.
Yeah. I think what stands out to me, right, and this is kind of one of those things where, uh, we kind of repeat this a couple times in this call, where Mac has talked about the power of second entries, right? And even in situations where maybe there are other things in the setup that don't particularly play out well, right? I think you could save yourself in more cases than not, right? By entering on especially there's that term I've used where you kind of create this width from the EMA, right? Where the more room you have back in the EMA, the more you kind of take your chances on this. I definitely see the whole measured move, right? Equal legs, kind of near equal second entry short, right?
Sure.
I think the number one thing that stands out to me is so the fundamentals of this trade is we are taking a second entry short to retest the lows of this downtrend, right? And as we're taking it as a move where we have the move down, break, right? New extreme to the low, right? That's kind of the fundamentals of it, correct?
Yep.
Now, I think where we kind of need to start on this one is we've talked about quality of trend, right? And I think with the fact that we kind of started like, kind of like this, I think it fits ish, right? And I think that, the fact that we even made it back to the EMA shows that it was attempting to do what we're talking about, right? Here is where I'm the most cautious of this one, right? It's the three touches here to create the overshoot, right?
Hmm.
And sometimes we see where we are creating an overshoot, right? And we're constantly having to like widen it and widen it and widen it. But usually that's not a situation. It's usually where it's kind of like the where it's like it's getting like lower and lower, right? Versus here, we're every single time we're not finding a consistent low, so we're constantly having to push it further out, right? And here we are kind of going back and forth. I wouldn't really consider this a strong trend just because it's like, what we talked about, prices go back and forth between support and resistance. This is a little just kind of just chopping lower, right? But with that being said, and for a trade that worked, and I think there's a chance that this thing is marked green, right? I think we can look at why it didn't work or why it didn't get the retest, right?
Sure.
Before I say it, would you guys have anything to see as far as why maybe we didn't get the retest?
I think you kind of.
Oh, go on.
I was just going to say, I think you kind of touched on it. It was a weak downtrend, and it probably at that point it probably was an overshoot.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have my channel like that. I had it a bit lower down, so where you've got the range, the bull candle. Yeah, I had it from there and then pull it down. If you keep pulling it down a bit more, I had a break and 2 legs to the new low.
Already, got it. Yeah. And honestly, I think this is one of those times this is kind of I guess on me. I don't know what Mac had drawn for the early morning, right? Did you guys for the mid morning? Did he have a uptrend drawn throughout any of this?
He did. I don't remember the exact points of the uptrend, but yeah, he did have some sort of weak uptrend drawn up through there.
I'm guessing it was probably something like that.
I think that's right.
I venture to say, right. I guess all that to say, the reason I asked that, right, has everything to do with the fact that, this, it's all mixed, right? So we're not entirely sure of what's going on. And, I think if we're going to call this a downtrend, right, and I think I'm going to just say this operating from a perspective of we're going to assume all this is correct, right? Just for now, we can make that assumption. Okay. If we make the assumption all these trend lines are correct, which, to be fair, they may or may not be, I think even if they are correct, they're not that strong, right? But I hope, and we've talked about this last week and in weeks past, where, with Pat, and there's been a lot of discussion of, Pat or Mac versus Alberto, stuff like that. And really, what Mac has done and what he's great at is he's able to kind of take the concepts and name them and organize them in a way that they become usable tools, right? Like price action, we've talked about. Really, there's only a few concepts, right? Like a triple test is really combining two principles of paths. It's prices find support and resistance, and the market moves in twos, right? So, like what a triple test is it's a two-legged move, but it's a two-legged move at a price level. So it's two-legged move, right? And then to a failure at a price level, and that's where prices go, right? So when you look at an overshoot, right? Why is an overshoot a move that where, okay, if we're looking for it, why would an overshoot mean that prices don't necessarily get a retest, right? Well, it follows the concept of most breakouts fail, right? We've definitely seen where if we have it in a range, right? And we have a breakout, right? I'm going to draw this in a way where, right? If we have a range, this YouTube thing is slow on my computer. If we have a range with a failed breakout, right, what do we expect? We expect this breakout to fail, right? Now, we oftentimes do see breakouts will fail multiple times, right? So we'll have the breakout that fails on one side, fails on the other side, it may come back in, right? Something like that, right? Well, what's one clue that we have on a failed breakout? And that's if prices enter the range from a certain perspective, right, or from a certain angle, we are going to expect prices to then exit, not expect, but we're going to be slightly biased towards prices entering or exiting from the same direction we entered in. So we entered from going up, we expect it to fail, break out the bottom, and exit going up. Does that make sense to everyone? Both of you guys?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Conversely, if we entered from up here, right, we are just a little bit more cautious about prices kind of turning around and bottoming out, right? It's not a written in stone thing, which is something we're looking for, right? So, and we've talked about, well, understanding that concept, right? When we have a downtrend, right, and prices are working down, right, our second entry short to retest the lows, right? This is the same thing as a failed breakout, just at an angle. Now, are there some key differences? Yes. But conceptually, right, principally, it's the same kind of thing, right? So with that being said, right, on this move, if we have the overshoot here, right, like let's say you take this and make it horizontal, right? Well, this turns into a move up to a range with a failed breakout one side, and then since we kind of came into it from that angle, we are then looking to potentially continue moving out there from the failed breakout, right? And that's where the failed breakout from like this kind of perspective is so something to look for, because really it's the opposite of this, right? When we enter on a second entry short to retest, we are essentially trading the failed breakout, right? Well, on an overshoot, especially in this spot, the reason we are so cautious overshoots is because overshoots kind of mean the failed breakout may have already happened, and we're just going to continue moving in the opposite direction, right? That was kind of a long explanation, but I think I'm trying to cover and try to get to in these calls now is like, okay, it's one thing to say, you know, be careful of failed breakouts, right? But that's kind of why, right? And I found just especially studying these last few months a little more in depth, is that all the quote unquote whys can be explained using really like the first chapter of Pats. Is just how do you combine the principles into these concepts. Right? Does that make sense? How you kind of see
Yeah.
this is kind of like a move up. We're in this. This is a trend, but if you move it sideways, it's a range. We fail, break out one side, and then continue the other way. Especially coming into it, right? So that's kind of all I see there. Um, and we've also talked about it too, where if you're gonna take a trade and it doesn't work, like this is one of those trades. It definitely could have worked, right? It's just usually in the situation we have additional forces pulling it back down here, right? Well, the failed breakout here or the overshoot kind of limits us as far as, okay, maybe we're not going to have that huge move down, right?
Oh.
But from a smaller standpoint, we still have a second entry that we know wants to come back and test the EMA. Now, keyword being test, knowing that it could test and break, or in this situation, it tests and rejects, right? Anything else you guys want to see or talk about on that one?
No, not for me.
Yeah, same.
The only trade I took today was this one. I think it was kind of discussed in Discord. Wasn't the best. I did see two from earlier today. I'll be interested to see if Mac marks. He probably will, but I think it's important to at least discuss them beforehand, right? And then the first one would be this one. I just don't know if I could. I mean, conceptually, this is a short-term trend up, break, two attempts to go higher. Well, you do get the new high, but in the situation, we'd be looking for a potential second leg up. Rejects here, and then you get a triple test back down to the EMA. It's just super sideways here. And with this 3-bar matching high, this is one of those things where you can kind of confuse it for congestion, or you could read it as strong rejection. I don't know. What's your guys' opinion on that?
I was super tempted on that one.
Yeah.
It closed below all those previous bars. But yeah, it just looked super sideways to me at that point, and so I skipped it. But yeah, even at that time, it never made the scalp, and it kind of retraced all the way back up, and I was still thinking of entering on a limit. But yeah, I just skipped that one.
For me, if there was a lower high and still quite a bit of room to the EMA, I most probably would have jumped in on it, but it just wasn't with that one, I'm afraid.
Yeah, and we've kind of talked about this in the past, where on a break we're expecting 2 legs up to a new high, right? All this move here really is it's a rejected second leg, right? We're trying to make that second leg up to a new high. We're getting rejected at this price level, and now this price is kind of saying, okay, well, prices kind of have two strong desires, right? That's to make a second leg up, but also prices are also always going to be drawn back to the EMA. The EMA acts as a magnet. Well, this is one of the situations where you can't enter like that. It's super sideways after this long of a move, right? I guess you can say that this is the 2 legs up, right? But I think today, and this is kind of an important concept of, there's a difference between things being kind of ambiguous and not moving super well, and it's because there's nothing that's in play. But I think today it was kind of obvious that there was a general bias. We had a general movement. There's something larger, but it was kind of hard to decipher what that was. So, right? So I think at this point in the chart, right, especially if we're saying, okay, we have this early uptrend drawn. We don't know if we've had the break of the new extreme yet, so maybe we get a second leg up, and we kind of do, right? We get that first move up, because we talk about prices moving in twos. This is the ending up, kind of larger time frame moving twos, right? It's just, do we know when to go short on it? So I think today was just tough as far as finding the buys. The other one that I looked at, as far as I'm interested to see what Mag has to say on it, is this one. This is the one where I know folks in Discord love to say, they just look at it and say, oh, is this a third entry? And it's like, really? No, right? This is on a smaller time frame, a trend, break, 2 legs to a new low, back to the EMA, right? And kind of similar to what we talked about on this one, right? Where when we say test back to the EMA, we could get a rejection off of it. And you can see prices kind of attempt to reject off of it, right? Like this is like a very common thing here where, for instance, here we took it, prices went back to the EMA, tested it, and just kind of gave up and failed on it, where prices did come up back to the EMA, attempted to kind of fail out of it, but then just continue up, right? For me, and this is one I'll need to study a lot closer, right, more in depth over the next coming weeks and months, is I've always found that, number one, if I'm waiting for a second leg, a good indicator is, have we already rejected off the EMA, which we have, right? So for me to say, okay, we've made 2 legs down, we've had 2 rejections under the EMA, do we take this trade back to the EMA? I think Max will mark this. I think this is a tough place just conceptually, because I feel like at this point of the day, right, it's just, I have no idea what's going on, right? And you are kind of taking this trade on saying, okay, we have this short-term move down, we have a break, 2 legs to a new low. Everything else being equal, we could take that. I'd just be so worried that there's something else going on here that I just don't know what's happening, right? I wonder, do you guys have it up? Did Dan post his EOD chart today? I don't even know if he would have.
Don't think so, not yet.
Interesting to see
But
if he posted
he
it.
did. I think he did take that second entry short a couple of bars beforehand.
This one?
Yeah.
Okay, so on that note, right? And if anything, this one kind of does give the power to this one, right? And we've talked about this before, right? And this is where I think a lot of traders currently are having some struggles. So I'm just going to move this here just so we kind of look a little more isolated. There's 2 moves that Dan loves that not a ton of people like, right? And that's, we talked about it, Dan loves a triple test that is after a bias, a short-term trend kind of bias plays out, right? So this is a terrible example of it, right? But, Dan and Mac love a trend up, break, you get a new high or new low, and then you get a triple test that forms after that, right? Now, Dan also loves a lower high, higher low to retest an extreme, right? I can guarantee you, if Dan posts that, and when if he did take it, or if he did mark it, you're going to have someone in the Discord saying, what about the STP, right? What about the STP? Well, knowing that we're going to, it's kind of the same thing, right? Is we've seen it countless times where we're working up in a trend and we were expecting 2 legs back to the EMA, right? And we get 1 leg back to the EMA, and it's a first entry before we get the retest, right? When these kind of happen, really, this rejection here is the failed attempt at retesting the short-term trend, right? And that's why you'll see Dan say on this type of move, it depends on how it sets up, right? because you see that we rejected off at one time, right? Came back, rejected off at a second time, right? Well, we know that when things reject twice, they have a tendency to continue in the opposite direction, right? That's usually an indication of, we can trust what's going on. So in this situation, it's okay. We know that prices once end here, and we know that prices this move is, if we're talking about order of operations and what's more important, this move right here is more important than this move right here, right? So if we're getting a lower high here, right, and especially off a key entry point, it's a minor key entry point, but it is a key entry point, and it's during a time where we're just not really sure of what else is going on, that's how you can enter that trade. Is it a little sideways? Definitely. I think we can all see that. But you guys both see, it's really kind of a combination of like a failure plus, support resistance levels, but just using the EMA. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't love it.
I think Dan, somebody was asking about the STT and the fact the STT didn't play out. I think Dan said something along the lines of 2 clear legs, rejection at the EMA, good signal bar kind of overrides that.
That's where we talk about how it sets up, right? I mean, the reality is I could sit here and draw a short-term channel on every swing all day, right? STTs are powerful in certain situations, and then in other situations, it's really, they can be overridden by other things, right? You're going to see a lot of traders get STT paralysis, where once they miss one trade because they were caught in an STT, they're just going to draw STTs through the entire chart, right? And just kind of ignore certain things, right? And I think, like Dan said, this is kind of one of them where you see we've rejected twice clearly here at the EMA. So that kind of tells me, we're going to go down and continue retesting this because it's tried to make the STT retest. It's trying to open, and you get a big, bearish bar where prices, it's like the first hurdle needs to go through in order to retest this. It strongly rejects off that. Well, that tells me that this and this is stronger than this one thing, right? You have 2 reasons to go to the short side and 1 reason to go to the long side. Well, in this scenario, obviously, this wins out, right? And really, this is where I've said these kind of lower highs and higher lows and triple tests, they're all variations of the same concept, right? Because it's, when we talk about failures, I don't take failures. When we talk about failures, it's trying to move in one direction, trying to move it again, and failing out and continuing. Well, it's kind of the same thing where prices test it once, test it twice, right? Can't make it through here, so they will then continue down. Let's see here. This is a trade I took. I don't love it, but really it's just a higher low to retest this, right? It's the kind of concept here is you're treating this as a single leg down, right? Break, new extreme, higher low to retest this. I don't think it's a great trade at all. I only took it on one account, so I didn't love it, but yeah, that's really all I have to say on that one. Not best trade. It's a loose triple test, really just a higher low to retest the uptrend, which I don't even think is that great. But yeah, what do you guys think? I think you can make the argument that's even like this, right? But even then, we talked about too, where it's like Max says, if you have a break of a trend up, sometimes if it's not a convincing break, you're going to get another leg or a push up. Either of you have anything on that one, AC, or like or dislike about it?
I did have the same uptrend you had without the break in new high.
Mm-hmm.
I did have that same STT as well, but yeah, the whole kind of choppy nature of that move down, I was just a bit cautious about taking that one.
Don't blame you. I think around this point is where I kind of drew. I think someone else in Discord had drawn it. For me, I was kind of something like this, just because, like I've always said, right? I kind of use the EMA as like my guide sometimes, where to me, right, you have this move up, this move down, and you kind of just see restarting this. I use the word slope, right, and kind of the angle of which it's going up. And to me, this had looked like another move up, and it just started to work better when you kind of treat it as like a mini spike to whatever this channel is, right? I'll say I don't really love it. I don't really rely on it, but I just kind of drew it more as a guide. That being said, I did like this one right here. I think Apple Market. I'll be interested to see what he has to say about it, but it's kind of the same thing. You have it really depends on how you call it, right? Because as much as we have this tick up, I don't know if you really call that a second entry long, right? But you do have the move down, high or low on top of the EMA to retest this move. I think the thing I like about this the least is that this is a little bit more on the EMA than this one was, right? This one came up above it, came back down and retested it, right? This one kind of came down and just kind of sat on it sideways, right? It's not really showing rejection. So you kind of start to develop this whole action going on, you know, which I think is kind of risky. And good, yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I did take that one as well, and it fell to make the scalp on those 4 bars afterwards. So I ended up scratching that for a break even. But yeah.
Yeah, and you know, conceptually, right? Conceptually, we can. This is one of those things where I think everything can be explained with paths. As far as I think there are going to be areas that are unpredictable, as far as we don't know what's going on, right? Just because of congestive or undecided nature. But really, you know, conceptually, you come down, you go into this sideways movement, right? And really, it's because of this is congested and prices. This is where we talked about why congestion is so risky, and it's because of the same failed breakout principle, right? Well, we've developed this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bars, right? And what happens here is that as we are playing a completely separate concept of this whole higher low to retest this small congestion still has weight to it, right? It still has influence. So basically, why congestion is so risky is we are taking our trade, right? But because we are congested, prices naturally want to follow the rule of failed breakouts, which is most breakouts fail, right? And the reality here is they're going to call this a failure, but really this is a breakout pullback of this. Prices attempted to break out of this, came back, retested the top side, but we had this that needs to play out. We have a general kind of upwards bias. And then you have this kind of support turn to resistance, resistance turn to support. We're on top of the EMA. So that's kind of what happens there, right? Yeah, I didn't even notice that. It does really kind of go up for, yeah, you would have to really sit in that for a while. And then to see this, that's kind of a tough thing to see.
Did you take that one, RJ, or you just got
No, I
it?
just marked it in real time. I
Okay.
saw it, marked it, kind of liked it. It's just, I think, you know, by the time we kind of got over here, I really just had no idea what was going on, you know? And Dan and I have talked extensively about market structure, right? And there's two types of market structure that we feel good trading out of, and that's really well defined and played out, right? So when it's mixed trading and things are kind of everything's done on a larger level and we can just be confident about the things on the shorter level, we like that. We also like things when things fall into a well-defined structure, right? I think today was tough just because I feel like there was an overall something, right? It's prices are choppy, but choppy with a direction, right? We were choppy moving up, but we weren't fitting into anything, right? So it's everything that we rely on wasn't there today, if that makes sense, right? We rely on prices moving between support and resistance off key entry points, making price targets, prices moving cleanly in twos, right? And neither were there, right? So even on a move, this is why this move over here, I was so cautious over it because, okay, if I was confident that on a larger level we were just in a pure mixed day, I would love this trade, right? But for all of these that are happening, I don't know what's happening on a larger level, right? And we kind of start to see the evidence of that here, right? So I drew that because I was looking for a triple test around there. We get a first big move in a while, right? And I would expect this to do one of two things, right? One, either we move cleanly in twos down, right? Or two, we move in a way that we're in a trend down, right? And we kind of get neither. We kind of just get this fall out the bottom move that initially falls into this like STT style move, which you could draw wider, but I think I wrote in the Discord. This is one of those situations where I have a pretty good initial move down, right? And to me, what this more looks like than anything is this looks like a move break, two legs to a new low, but it's just there's something so much larger that's impacting this. It can't, operate in a way that's like clean, decisive moves. It's just moving there, right? So
Sure.
it's tough to, it's I guess the way I put it is the easier it is to predict or to see where prices are heading, the easier it's going to be to predict where prices are going, right? And if things get to certain places in ways that are kind of confusing, then I believe that it's harder to guess where they're going to go. One second. Work email. Was there anything else from today that anyone kind of want to take a look at?
Not from me.
I'm good.
Okay. Then why don't we, especially since it's being recorded, let's do one more of these then. It's been like about 15 minutes on it. We'll continue doing the looking at Dan's entries and seeing what made some of them what they were. I believe we stopped at around 125. Actually, we may have looked at this one. Yes, I think you were on the call last time. I think we looked at this one already. So All right. So, okay, interesting day here. Um, I guess from a market structure standpoint, right? What stands out to me is that we're very kind of overnight undecided, right? We have an attempt at a trend down, which doesn't really get to play out. I think this is more a product of this red channel breaking and the two legs to new low, right? I think just market structurally wise, I really do want to point out that you can very much see the whole market moves in twos happening on this, right? We have this one singular move, right? This center of the pattern correction, followed by a weaker two-legged move up, right? So it's one of those things where, as much as this can be treated as a two-legged move, right, on a different time frame, this can be one leg, two legs to one leg, right? Um, I think this is an interesting one to look at because I think I see two trades that Dan marked that he has as green that he took, and then one blue trade which is unmarked or untaken, but it's marked as blue. So why don't we take a dive into some of these, right? So, okay, this is a good example. I think this is one of those where you are, let me put this. Mac does a great job of taking concepts like and giving them kind of these neat, tidy names, right? Where it's if I never mentioned this guy. I've never actually studied him, but where Mac, when you talk about it in comparison to Al Brooks, right? Mac takes Al Brooks' concepts, right, and kind of organizes them and combines them into like he gives things a name, right? But they are still rooted in basic price action concepts, right? Um, so this is one of those where you look at it and say, okay, it looks like Dan is marking this as a kind of second entry long, higher low, right? But really, it's more of if you just kind of try to verbalize and articulate what is actually happening here. This is a key entry point, right? And you're looking at it from the perspective of, okay, you have this key entry point working its way up, right? Prices are trying to work its way down and they're getting rejected off the EMA twice, right? So I can't tell if that's another low or not. But even regardless, right? This is kind of similar move that we were looking at earlier where, Dan loves a higher low to continue with something behind it, right? So you have this possible key entry point working its way up. You have the EMA behind it and you have the trend line providing some support, right? This is one of those things where from a technical pattern point of view, it's not fantastic. But this is just more of saying, okay, he's looking for something that is kind of carrying, right, some weight behind it. And that's why he loves the triple test, because triple test is proven level of support. This is also, you have two proven levels of support, right? And you have the clue here that, okay, number one, you have the key entry point and trend line working up. You have the EMA, which is now behind it, and it's like, okay, we broke through, spent time, rejecting off of it. This is our first time coming back to it, and we cannot break through it again. And also, on a move like this, you may be getting a second leg up, right? The fact that this this short-term trend in the opposite direction gets denied is also just further proof, right? This one is interesting, mainly because, really this is playing, like, I think to look at this on its own, like these 16 bars, right? 10 bars, I can't count. You can call it, okay, maybe it's a second entry long, right? Maybe it's a failed breakout of this yellow thing, right? But I think the reason that this is blue is you are combining a ton of other things, right? Dennis really have a drawn, but we do have a triple test. I think he's just leveraging the top of the range here. And really, a lot of it is you're expecting the second leg up after this, right? Well, if this trade works in this area, right? So this is where you can look at. Okay, you look back here and you see where prices should have turned and didn't. Well, what that tells me is that we are in a trending style area. So with that being said, right, we can now look at it from the point of view of, okay, we've developed this kind of support here. We've already had this two-legged move, right? We've had this potential move up to a new high. Well, maybe, right, we're looking for a price action perspective of we're going to get a second push up, right, which we do. So with it being a lot of room to the EMA, building the support, I think if you were just to isolate this move, it doesn't set up particularly well, but when you try to add the other stuff in there, it makes sense. Does everyone else see that? Any questions on that?
Yeah.
Yep.
No questions.
This is kind of where we, even going back to today's chart, where we kind of look at it in perspective of, okay, there's a difference between entering these kind of dicey-ish trades when we don't know what's going on, versus here it's, okay, we have a lot more clues we can play with, So I think that's the main difference. Now, looks like he took this one, right? Marked it green. I guess before I chime in, do you guys have anything you see here any comments as what you see here?
I'm just thinking why it's green. There's a very clear 2 legs, second entry, break of downtrend, expecting a new low. I'm guessing it's green because of it is quite sideways at that point.
Yep.
And you have that engulfing bar for your second entry. But I think overall, I quite like that.
I quite like that one as well.
I agree. I think for the same reasons that you said, Fahim. And I think this is a great reason to why we do this, right? Because, okay, I think it's actually a perfect example because I think we can all look at this trade and say we do kind of like it, right? I think it's really important to get, and Dan obviously took it, right? But, try to say, okay, this is our tool, this is our resource. What is he saying here, right? And really, it's like you said, it's exactly like you said, Fahim. I think Dan is super careful, right? Super careful on when we go to a 2 legs to an area to do a second entry long or second entry short, right? It's almost like how quickly things turn around is important, right? When we start to move up and then it goes, 1, 2, 3 sideways with the engulfing, it is a sign of congestion, right? And I think even in areas where Dan is looking to take a trade, he's still paying attention to that, right? So I think here especially, it's one of those things where there's a difference between when prices, go up to a key entry point and turn around, right? Versus when prices move up to a key entry point and kind of like, take their time and then turn around. Like there's a difference here, right? And I think Dan is always highly aware of how quickly these things turn around. And I think that's why on this one, right, he said he took it but didn't love it. And on this one, right, he took it and didn't make the same comment because it's just, this is a decisive turnaround, right? All within a bar it is showing is turning around. Versus sometimes it just kind of sits there. And that's kind of the same thing here, right? We're just kind of sitting at these price levels. So I think this is really important to see that, okay, even in a trade that you may like, even in areas where we are super confident about the context, right? This is a context trade. The context is great. How it sets up is not as fantastic, right? It sets up decently, but I think knowing Dan, this green arrow is to say like, hey guys, this one worked. I know a bunch of people took it. You still need to be paying attention to something here, right? I think that's kind of the message on this one. And you kind of see the same thing up here. We didn't even take this one. It's a similar style of thing, right? All right. What is this? Today, on this day, it was 128. I think we can continue tomorrow on the 129 chart, plus the stuff we covered from tomorrow's chart. Does anyone else have any questions or anything they want to discuss from at least today or this chart or in general?
I'm good, RJ.
I'm good too, thank you.
All right, I'll stop the stream there.